we come onto something called dysphagia, which is a big word for basically not being able to swallow. Now, this was also another known side effect or deficit from brain surgery. My surgeon told me this was going to happen. He's like, look, Joel, after surgery, you're going to have really big struggles with your swallow. And at the time, I'm like, who cares? Like, what does that even mean? Because I had a fully functioning throat back then. But then as soon as it happened, I'm like, oh, whoa, this is absolutely horrible. And it's why it's part three of the video. It is easily the worst symptom to try and recover from. Um, an easy way to imagine it, picture there's like a massive brick wall stuck in the back of your throat, and you cannot swallow anything past it. Food, liquids, and grossly enough, your saliva. Uh, I would basically choke on my saliva every single night as I try to fall asleep because my body forgot to how to naturally process saliva. It was actually quite gross. There'll be a little bit of gross stuff in this next bit. I'm not going to lie, it's all talking about swallowing and saliva and stuff. So um, just to get back on track, I couldn't eat or drink anything for 3 months. So that was very, 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 very challenging. Imagine going 3 days or 3 hours without your favorite food, or 3 days or 3 weeks. I went 3 months without food. It was absolutely horrible. Because I'm a big eater, I love to eat as much food as possible, but yeah, it was horrible. So what had to happen, and you may notice from other videos, so the surgeon had to put a tube up my nose, down the back of my throat, and into my stomach to feed me. And eventually, when my surgeon realized that I would need a feeding tube for a lot longer, they actually had to put what's called a peg tube, and it drilled through my tummy into my stomach. And on the other end, I had like a little bottle where I would pour essentially protein shakes into it. And that's how I stayed nourished and kept my energy up for 3 months, because I legitimately couldn't swallow or eat anything. Um, yeah, it was horrible. And circling back to saliva, I had to use one of those dental suckers to basically suck the saliva out of my throat because it couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't swallow. Yeah, it was horrible. And the rehab facility would not accept me until I could swallow saliva without using a saliva sucker, because they just didn't have the equipment at their facility to support someone who had needs like mine. And yeah, that's why I spent so long at hospital. I spent 5 weeks at hospital because it took me that long for me to start swallowing my saliva on my own, and when I was well enough for the rehab facility to actually accept me. Um, so yeah, when I did get to rehab, and even starting in hospital, I had what was called a speech pathologist, and they would try and teach you with sensory exercises and different strengthening exercises on how to swallow food again, how to swallow drink again. It was horrible. I used to hate doing it because essentially they're trying to get you to swallow food and drink when your throat doesn't work. I would constantly choke, and it felt like I was choking to death like every single day. It was horrible. Um, they would use foods that were smooth and easy to swallow, and over time, the thickness of the food and the drink actually would increase. Just trying to get me to be able to digest and swallow foods and drinks that were easy at the start, and then as I got better at it, the thickness started to go back down to thin, where I could get down to water. Um, so I guess the three foods that I used the most and were easiest for me to kind of get back into eating were bananas. Bananas are just easy to chew, and they're slippery, and they're easier just to swallow. And they've actually got a bit of bulk about them, so you can actually feel yourself trying to swallow them. The second food on top of bananas was pasta. Pastas, again, they have a bit of body about them, but they're also slippery. So it helps the whole sensation train itself. And then other foods like sorbets, ice creams, custards, for obvious reasons. There was a bit of a body about them. They were thick, but they were also easy to go down, but not too quickly. Because over time, and the three foods that are probably the hardest are mixed foods, where there's like a solid and a liquid in it. So think of a noodle soup or a Vietnamese noodle soup, where there's noodle and meat and beef and chicken, but there's also liquid. So trying to get the beef, the chicken, and noodle down, but also trying to accommodate for the liquid, which is thinner, was a really confusing combination for my brain and my throat to swallow down. So yeah, that was definitely a really hard one. Other things that are hard, so sliced meats really like stick into your esophagus, and it made it hard to either swallow it down or get it back up if you needed to, if you're choking on it. Um, in a line with that, so smoked salmon's really hard to swallow to get the food down the throat. And yeah, most seafoods and spinach and arugula and bok choy and leafy vegetables like that are really, really hard to swallow. But over time, like at the moment, I can eat everything, but I really have to focus on every single mouthful of food and drink I take, even to this day. Even if it is a banana or a pasta or an easy food, I have to be mindful and focus on chewing really small and really focusing on getting the food into the back of my throat, and then really slamming down on the swallow so it does get down. So yeah, I've got to be mindful. Even to this day, it does force me to eat very, very slowly. So when I go out with family and friends to a restaurant or a cafe, yeah, like I'm forever getting doggy bags to take home with me because I'm eating so slowly. My portion of the food, when all my friends and family have finished their food, is obviously still left in front of me. So I'll take a doggy bag and go home and eat it when I'm a bit more relaxed and can eat it later, which is completely fine. I don't mind a doggy bag at all. So yeah, that kind of wraps up dysphagia. It is very, very challenging and probably one of the most challenging things to recover from. I've made another video on this before. I might tag it at the top. But yeah, I've nearly choked to death properly 3 times. My old housemate and my fiance, they've both had to fully apply the Heimlich maneuver and dislodge food from my throat because I was choking to death, and it's absolutely petrifying and scary. Even scary enough that I've bought this device that's if you're home on your own, you can actually put it on your mouth and it dislodges food that is lodged in your throat for those times that I am home alone or my fiance is traveling for work and I may start choking. I've got this device under my sink, and it's a lifesaver and gives me a massive peace of mind.